Hi guys, welcome to Office Blokes Reacts. I'm Office Bloke Dave.
I'm made in Britain.
Made in Britain. Conceived in Britain.
Made in Britain.
We are two of the Office Blokes. Office Bloke Mike, he's gone a bit...
To China.
Yeah, he's gone to China, yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. I was going to say he's gone a little bit weird. He's
gone to China to pick up a bug. He's gone bat eating.
Ah, right, yeah.
He's gone bat munching, hasn't he?
Not again.
Yep.
Ended badly last time Mike did that.
Yep.
We are two of the Office Blokes. As you can see, Mike is also... he's gone, hasn't he?
COVID.
Yeah, he's got COVID. He's stuck at home. He is all right, though. Don't worry about him. I've had a lot of DMs from people worried about Mike, and also people saying, if you've sacked him, just let us know.
People sending like pages of like,
I know.
Where's man? Even I'm not that arsed.
He's at home with COVID. He's perfectly fine, don't worry. And he will be back very soon. Right, why Chinese manufacturing wins?
Quite topical this at the moment because we had a bit of a debate about it, didn't we? About the importation from stuff from China.
Yeah. I'm guessing. I've always assumed it's because they can undercut people by overworking and underpaying workers. That's what I just always assumed.
Yeah, I think they've also got better access to raw materials probably as well.
Well, they buy up the recycling and the raw materials from councils, don't they? They get shipping containers of plastic just taken over there. But I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yep.
So why Chinese manufacturing wins then? Let's do this.
At the end of the first millennium, around 1000 AD, China was definitively the most powerful country in the world. More than a third of the world lived within its borders, its technology was the most advanced in existence, and its economy accounted for an astronomical 50% of the world's GDP. The West paled in comparison to China. But eventually, Europe arose from its dark ages, the importance of China diminished, and the West came to rule the world. Today that is still largely the case, but China is rising again. In 1978, China had a GDP of only $200 billion, only about 4% of the world's GDP. But nowadays, that GDP has risen to $11 trillion and accounts for 15% of all economic activity in the world.
Wow.
This economic renaissance of the last 40 years is largely thanks to one industry: manufacturing. We've come to accept that China is the world's factory, but it wasn't always this way. In the early 20th century, goods were often just produced right where they were sold. America made American goods, Europe made European goods. It wasn't until cheap worldwide shipping became available that the production side of a company could be relocated to the other side of the world. But why did China win? How did this country become the manufacturing giant it is today? In 1978, Deng Xiaoping took power in the People's Republic of China. He quickly visited Bangkok, Singapore, and other flourishing Asian cities and was convinced that, in order to succeed, China needed to open itself up to the outside world, at least to an extent. He gave people control of their farms, privatized business, and most importantly, allowed foreign investment in the country for the first time in decades. He opened up 4 special economic zones with tax incentives and exemption from the oversight that the rest of the country saw on its investments and trade activity. These 4 zones were essentially the free market portions of China. But none was more successful than this one, Shenzhen in the Guangdong province.
I was going to say it's going to be Shenzhen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the amount of stuff that I've bought off Amazon, and that's where it's made, and then there's tech, there's computer components made there. It's a name that I'm very familiar with. I probably couldn't tell you any of the other provinces.
You'll know when you see them.
You think?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, the cities you mean, like Shenzhen, that's a city. You've got places like Beijing, Shanghai.
Yeah, I know, but like the manufacturing provinces.
Or the 4, the 3 ports.
Yeah.
So they're free, what do they call them? Free trade zones.
Free trade zones, yeah.
Went there to see what it was like. Before its designation as a special economic zone in 1980, Shenzhen was a tiny town with about 30,000 inhabitants. But today, that's grown to nearly 18 million people.
Wow.
That means that its size rivals that of New York and London. It's believed that Shenzhen might have been the single fastest growing city in human history. Every other special economic zone was an established area before its designation. But Shenzhen made sense as a spot where China could embrace the West as it lay just north of the border of Hong Kong, what was at the time a British territory. Today, Shenzhen is the electronics manufacturing capital of the world.
So Shenzhen as a city is really known for two things. One is its manufacturing capabilities, especially for consumer electronics products. And second, its gravitation for talents or human resources, especially on the product development and research and development disciplines.
Apple, Samsung, Microsoft, Sony, Canon, they all manufacture products here in Shenzhen. In fact, 90% of the world's electronics are made at least in part in this city.
Wow.
Everything just costs less in China, so labor costs less too. Where a factory in the United States might pay upwards of 10 to 15.
Can't get my head around that.
It's absolutely mind-boggling, isn't it? One city.
90%.
Yeah. So
That's incredible.
Well, that's a Canon camera. I assume they'd be made in Japan, being a Japanese company. That's
just incredible.
I'm just looking around the room
it's
now.
The percentage
just
that one. It's just the 90% bit that's got me.
Yeah. Well,
mental.
He said in part.
Yeah.
So maybe they make transistors there that get put in everything, but it's still a mind-boggling stat, that, isn't it?
An hour. A Chinese laborer would happily accept $3 or $4 an hour.
Let's go back on that.
So labor costs less too. Where a factory in the United States might pay upwards of $10 to $15 an hour, a Chinese laborer would happily accept $3 or $4 an hour in Shenzhen. When I was there, I withdrew the equivalent of $80 from an ATM upon arrival and left 4 days later with cash left over. A 30-minute taxi ride cost about $7 US. A full meal at a local place was about $3. But China isn't cheap entirely naturally. China has artificially depressed the value of their currency. Up until 2005, the Chinese government just said that the exchange rate was 8.27 won per dollar, and that was that. They then went a few years allowing it to increase in value within a margin, but in 2008 they pegged its value again to make Chinese exports more attractive during the financial crisis. Nowadays the government just picks an exchange rate daily and lets the currency fluctuate from it by up to 2%. This just makes it so Western companies can buy more for less. China also doesn't charge taxes on exports, while the US doesn't charge taxes on imports. The US doesn't even charge customs fees for some products like tablet PCs, so some products can make it all the way from their factory in China to stores in the US completely tax-free. When I was in Shenzhen, I visited a company called Anchor. They make all sorts of consumer electronics, but chances are if you have something from them, it's one of their portable batteries. I asked their CEO why so many electronic companies are now based in Shenzhen.
So the advantage is that we're close to the supply chain, so everything is faster, right? So instead of you do a mock-up and see it like 2 weeks later, here actually you send them design to mock-up and you receive it like 3 days later.
In Shenzhen, there are markets where you can buy every part imaginable. There are factories ready to build prototypes in a matter of days. There are engineers ready to work at a drop of a hat. Development just happens faster in Shenzhen. A US company might...
The big issue with that is he's obviously putting the really positive spin on this, isn't he? The positive light, but the theft of intellectual property has gone through the roof of people that are outsourcing to China.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know if it's encouraged by the state, but they've got full-blown cars that are rip-offs of other cars that are made in China, like a Bentley that isn't a Bentley.
I saw I was at an oil and gas show and I saw this truck that was built by, I think it was Halliburton that built it. It was on display and it was all singing, all dancing. Everyone was gathered around this truck. And I think it was about 2 or 3 years later, saw one in the China show, exactly the same. Yeah. Not by Halliburton, by a Chinese company.
Yeah. So as a consumer, we want the best product for the cheapest, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not necessarily sustainable. Even with COVID, they said that a lot of Americans were saying China manufactures our bullets and our medicines, and they're like, you've literally got us by the balls. You refuse.
That's what I was going to say. It's a risky strategy. With, like you say, if they're doing 90% of all electronics or parts of something that goes in an electronic device. That's fucking incredible. That.
Yeah, they just shut up shop and the world will grind to a halt, pretty much, won't it?
It's like the gas problem we've got here at the moment.
Yeah.
That all comes from like the Ukraine, doesn't it? Or from Russia?
I think it's Russia.
Yeah,
or
it has to pass through the Ukraine or something like the pipes. It's just so expensive at the moment. They're just sort of like slowing it down, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's the same factories as one based in Shenzhen, but the geographical distance makes production slower. In addition, word travels fast in Shenzhen. A few years ago, Anker was first to market with a technology called Power IQ that allows for faster device charging. The engineers from Anker told me that a big reason they were able to go to market before the Western companies was because they heard about it first thanks to the proximity to other engineers and companies. Shenzhen just produces things better and faster, but a product isn't just a physical item.
Honestly, being in Shenzhen for this company is an advantage for the supply chain.
I thought I recognised Anker. It's the the Bluetooth wireless speakers.
Yeah.
There's loads of those Anker ones over here, isn't there?
I've seen it around the name.
Yeah.
We can develop very good products with competitive price, but for the brand, it's also a kind of a challenge.
What Shenzhen can't build as well is brands. Certain companies like Anker have been able to an extent thanks to smart PR and marketing, but some other companies just don't bother. Lucrative Western consumers want familiar and approachable feeling brands, but cultural differences and geographic distance often make Chinese-based companies just seem different. All across Shenzhen, I saw these boxes filled with rentable portable chargers, and as it turns out, it was an Anker product. But the Chinese-designed product didn't really succeed in the Western market.
So actually, talking about Anker Box, the product is originally designed for the Western market. However, actually, our trial in Seattle wasn't that successful. So we realized, first of all, US people actually, when they go to a bar, they actually really go there drinking instead of looking at their phones.
I've seen them in loads of pubs here. Not
charging stations.
Not the Anker ones, but the same thing where you just take out the big battery pack and charge your phone. They're on the bar everywhere.
I just take the guys who works behind the bar and say, "Have you got a charger for this?" Plug it and leave it behind the bar for half an hour.
What kind of a psycho leaves the house without a full charge on the phone anyway? It's 2021.
Depends on what you're out for.
Walking to a bar in China, you'll find actually 20 tables of people standing around looking at their phone.
When the designers are thousands of miles away from the consumer, they might not be as knowledgeable of their wants. Some companies have sprung up in Shenzhen whose whole business is to develop and produce products without a brand. They're called white label companies. They might produce earphones, for example, then sell them to a Western audio company who will attach their brand and sell the product at a markup. Despite its enormous role in increasing the GDP of China 30-fold in the last 30 years, manufacturing is not an entirely sustainable industry for the country long term. The problem is that, rather ironically, the economic growth that manufacturing spurred in China has increased labor prices to a point where their manufacturing is less competitive. Before manufacturing came in, China was a country of poor rural farmers. But today, China has a real middle class and cities that are expensive to live in. It used to be that workers like the ones at Anker's factory moved to the city for a few years when they were young to make money for their family back home. But nowadays, people are moving to cities permanently and want to be able to set up solid middle-class urban lives. The average cost for real estate in central Shenzhen is almost $1,200 per square foot. That's even higher than San Francisco and New York. Even when workers live outside the city center, higher wages are necessary even just to pay for housing. At the same time, manufacturing is becoming less labor-intensive every day as robots and automation are becoming increasingly advanced and inexpensive. In 2015, China launched an initiative spending hundreds of billions of dollars each year to upgrade and automate factories to keep prices low. But this will likely do little to keep companies from packing up shop and moving elsewhere. Manufacturing lines that can be automated are likely to move back to the United States and the rest of the Western market. Robots cost the same whether they're in the United States or China, so manufacturing products in the US helps save on shipping costs and certainly is good for PR. At the same time, the labor-intensive jobs that China prospered on in the past decades are moving to less developed and less expensive countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and India. Chinese manufacturing firms are responding to this by opening up their own factories all across the world, everywhere from Africa to the United States itself. The model that might work for China in the future is that of Anker, Chinese-based firms that can take advantage of their proximity to the production lines to cut down on development cost and time. Shenzhen-based startups like Anker, DJI, and OnePlus have already succeeded.
Wow.
DJI.
There's a few of those things in the studio, isn't there? Wow. It's mad, isn't it? It's absolutely, it's mind-boggling. And to think that they're pricing themselves out of the manufacturing and then outsourcing it to cheaper countries, it's madness, isn't it?
Blow my mind, this.
Yeah.
taking advantage of this proximity, but more are being established each day. If you see a hardware-based Kickstarter campaign, there's a good chance it comes from Shenzhen. 10 years ago, a company would be hard-pressed to succeed in Shenzhen as its own brand because historically the retailer has acted as a barrier in between the manufacturer and consumer. But with the rise of Amazon and other e-commerce sites, it's now possible for Eastern companies to sell directly to the Western consumer in a system that rewards for quality over price. The time really is ripe for Chinese entrepreneurship. While Silicon Valley might be the dominant area for software startups, it's hard to rival Shenzhen as an ecosystem for hardware development and manufacturing. I have to give a huge thanks to Anchor for bringing me out to Shenzhen to research and film this video. It truly would not have been possible without them, and they gave me complete creative control over the video.
It did feel a little bit like an advert for Anchor, the whole video, I'm not going to lie. Really interesting that though, isn't it?
It was, yeah.
It was a very rose-tinted view of it though, I think, a little bit.
I mean, you think of the size of what the population is there. What was it, 18 million?
Yeah.
It's gone up from, what was it, 30,000 or something?
I think it was 30,000, yeah.
Jeez.
It's balmy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, but it goes to show the power the Chinese have over on the manufacturing side.
Yeah.
If anything, that's just electronics. You know, when you look at all your toys and everything like that, that's all made over there as well.
We were talking about it in the pub yesterday, funnily enough, about China's sort of dominance and their plans. And I was just saying, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, they're playing a blinder on the global scale at the moment to take over manufacturing, for the economy to go from, what was it, 3% of the world's GDP up to 18% over the past 30 years.
Well, they did have 50% at one point.
Well, yeah, but I mean, when was that? That was hundreds of years ago, wasn't it?
Early 1900s, wasn't it? Did it say?
I think it was around then, wasn't it?
But
It's
still,
really
major
interesting.
major powerhouse.
Yeah.
Keep on their side.
Well, if you want your drone to carry on flying,
Yeah, exactly right.
and not attack you
Till Mike breaks it.
again. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that too. Don't forget, like and subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers, guys.